Namaskar and welcome, friends. I am Shailesh Agrawal, Executive Director, Building Materials and Technology Promotion Council, and today I'm going to conduct an interactive session on emerging construction systems being used in lighthouse projects with Professor C.V.R. Murthy, Professor at IIT Madras, a subject specialist in earthquake-resistant design and construction. Professor Murthy worked earlier as professor at IIT Kanpur, and then he served two IITs, namely IIT Hyderabad and IIT Jodhpur. Currently, Professor Murthy is heading the most important earthquake sectional committee of BIS and has been charged with the responsibility of making the national standards at par with international standards. Also, while at IIT Kanpur, Professor Murthy was part of the effort of establishing the National Information Center on Earthquake Engineering, also known as NICE, to make available earthquake engineering related literatures, standards, design procedures, latest know-how, and technologies to the stakeholders online free of cost. With the idea to reach out to the masses and create awareness on earthquake design, earthquake resistant design and construction, Professor Murthy wrote 32 earthquake tips in association with me and BMTPC, which is one of the most widely circulated and read document nationally as well as internationally by professionals and others. With sir, this is a very brief introduction, and with this brief introduction, I warmly welcome you and thank you for joining the discussion today.
Ji, thank you so much, Shailesh Agrawal sir. Wonderful to see friends back in action, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you today in this discussion meeting. And I hope that we'll be able to dwell on details that you are looking forward to.
Professor Murthy, you are aware of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs Government of India initiative, the Global Housing Technology Challenge India, GHTC India. Through this challenge, we could create a basket of 54 new construction systems, which are broadly classified into 6 broad categories. And now these are being used in 6 lighthouse projects, and the technologies are being projected as the housing construction technologies of the future. These live house projects are live laboratories. Also, we have rolled out a scheme of technograhis who are given online training through e-module and will be taken to sites of these 6 lighthouse projects for learning the field level implementation and further replication. Also, Professor Murthy, the viewers of this online program are not only technical professionals, but also faculty members, research students, public and private officials, developers, builders, policy makers, construction agencies, startups, innovators, and entrepreneurs. Just to make this discussion complete, I would broadly, apprise you about the 6 broad categories which are being used in these 6 lighthouse projects, so that our discussion, becomes complete. The first category is precast concrete construction, where 2D planar elements are being used. This technology is being used in Chennai, adjacent to IIT. And these structural elements, as you know, are cast off site and assembled at site with the wet grouting. There is another category being used of precast concrete construction, which is known as 3D volumetric construction. This technology is being used at Ranchi, and the technology makes use of various structural modules. And those structural modules can be a room, it can be a wall, or it can be a kitchen, bath, or any other pod element. And they are being cast with services and then erected at site one over other like Lego blocks. The third category, sir, is precast sandwich panel system, which is being used at Indore. And because Indore we are using a high-rise structure, so these precast sandwich panel systems are being used with steel structural frame. The sandwich panel systems are primarily drywall elements. In this particular project at Indore, we are using a light core. It's a core of elevated concrete, which comprises of cement, sand, and EPS granules. This light core is sandwiched between 2 outer faces of calcium silicate board or fiber cement board. Sir, fourth category is quite popular. All of us know about monolithic concrete construction with aluminum formwork. There is another variant of this technology, which is tunnel formwork. So this variant is being used at Rajkot, It's a customized formwork which is made of steel, and it is made in a factory, which enables modular tunnel construction in a single pour by casting together structural walls and slabs. And these structural walls, you can call them shear walls as well. The fifth category, which is also very popular, is cold form steel structural system. This is being used in Agartala, but since Agartala falls in zone 5 and we are having a structure G+5, so light gauge steel structural system with steel, hot rolled steel frame is being used here. So the wall panels are of cold form steel with inner and outer faces of precast concrete panels. And the core is of lightweight concrete. The last but not the least is stay in place formwork system, which is being used at Lucknow. Again, this is being used with structural steel frame. And sir, stay in place formwork system is a sacrificial or lost formwork system, which acts as an insulation or part of the structure. In Lucknow, PVC stay in place wall forms are being used. These are, sir, pre-finished walls made of PVC, and it comes in different colors. So it has in between it is hollow, so you can put reinforcement depending upon the structural requirements, or you can fill it with concrete or lightweight concrete as per your applications. Sir, I have just tried to explain you very briefly these 6 technologies. Now I'm going to ask you some commonly raised questions about these systems. We are recording the entire session with the objective that our technograhis, who will be the change agents to bring technology transition in the construction sector, can understand the various facets of these systems and at the same time decipher the prevailing misconceptions related to cost, structure and functional performance, maintenance, etc. So, sir, if you have just understood, may I start the conversation by asking you questions one by one?
Get started. Yeah, let's get started.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Sir, you have been very kind. I know your forte is earthquake resistant design and construction, but being a structural engineer par excellence, I thought I must have a session with you and have your response on these technologies. So, sir, my first question is, which we have discussed several times. Precast concrete construction have not performed well during past earthquakes worldwide. Can we conclude through these standalone? I'm using the word standalone as well. Can we conclude through these standalone failures that precast concrete construction is not suitable in Indian context, whether it is 2D or it is 3D?
Thank you, Shailesh, for that wonderful exposition of all the technologies that are being used in India. Coming to this pointed question of precast construction, yes, precast constructions have done very poorly in general in many earthquakes worldwide. And the primary reason has been the poor connections that were used in that. And if we construct the same designs in India, we will see the same result. So that's not the approach that we should be taking. Actually, in India, we should undertake a full-scale R&D testing program of various precast construction schemes. Now, in that full-scale testing program, not only the efficacy of the connections is tested in their original size with the original members, but also the efficiency of the whole building system is tested. And only when the precast construction schemes pass this test, we actually are entitled to call them as precast construction technologies. So I'm making a distinction between schemes and technologies. Schemes are proposals, and technologies are those which are put through a full-scale test program. So I would say, without such rigorous testing, it is premature to start building structures with the proposed schemes without having evidence of their good performance during the extreme earthquake shaking. Now, you might say that, can we use this in non-seismic areas? What's happening, peculiar situation with India is, we have earthquakes in the northern region, and in the peninsular India, we get surprise earthquakes. You can see Killari earthquake in 1993, right? Or the Koyana earthquakes of the 1960s. These are all surprise earthquakes. And so if one such surprise earthquake happens, we can be embarrassed. So it is best for us to verify them through full-scale testing and use them wherever we can based on the improvements that is required, do them, and then use them again at the required places. As you see, India is no places without earthquakes. So we don't have zone 1 now. We have zone 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Yes. So that's why we are saying that let's be very careful, because this is houses for the poor people, houses for the people who have spent their lifetime savings on building a house. So let's do it nicely for them. Let's do it safely. Gee.
Okay. Sir, the next question is related to this only because since you have raised questions about joints and connections of precast concrete construction, I've been talking to a wide spectrum of researchers, technology providers, practitioners around the globe, and even academicians like you. So I am being told that existing joint and connections, namely they use emulative, as you call it, the bed jointing system. There are other systems prevalent with, like dry jointing with the mechanical connectors where you put angles, and splices and weld the two modules or two elements together. And there is another dry wall system through nut and bolts. And it is being claimed that they are being designed and detailed for the desired performance parameter. Let me just repeat it again, that for desired performance parameters, each and every joint is being detailed and designed. So what's your take on this?
See, claims are many. And if you say that they have designed for a certain desired performance level, I'm not aware of a standard in India which asks for a desired performance level. So the desired performance level is being set by them and they are proposing the product themselves. So that is what is the worry. So I would say to build confidence, it is necessary to gather evidence from full-scale testing. I'll go back to that anchor point that I started with. In India, we should carefully admit technologies that come from abroad. Now, there are countries where earthquakes are not a concern, and hence precast may be considered successful in those countries, right? That's perfectly fine for their environment. But in India, we should examine carefully these proposals before admitting these internationally used construction schemes in India. And there is no bigger truth than to do a series of full-scale tests in India and be convinced that proposals can be admitted as technologies. Now, these three connection systems that you mentioned, the devil is in the details. And if you look at the drawings carefully, you will see that development lengths are not sufficient. The maximum bending moments are at the joints, maximum stresses are at the joints. And if development lengths are not there in the connections, then you will not be able to achieve the required performance. So I would think that, I think claims apart, we should do a detailed study of all the technologies that are being proposed and then give the best one for implementation for the country. G.
Okay. Sir, the next question is about functional performance. There is constant debate, between the people and the technology providers that these precast concrete construction being thin elements, their functional performance with respect to, thermal comfort, water tightness, fire rating is being questioned all the time. So please elaborate on this aspect.
Yes. Yes, this is a genuine concern. There's no doubt about it. In fact, you would go to building physics and get a clear calculation done, and you will see that 100 to 125 mm concrete walls do not have the thermal mass for resisting the extreme climates, right? Whether it is hot or cold, they don't have the thermal mass. In fact, I will give you an example. We built houses and office and the entire campus with double wall system in Jodhpur. And that was 600 mm thick stone wall, 600 mm, right? And not just plain stone wall. It has a EPS layer in between for insulating the heat from coming inside or the cold weather from coming inside. So this is where I would say that the heat travels faster through concrete of very small thickness. It just goes like that in 1 hour, 2 hours. So if the summer is at hottest at 2 o'clock in outside, then in about 3 o'clock time, you will see that heat will come inside. But if you have thermal mass, typically this is delayed till about 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the night. And that is what thickness does. So there are different materials with different conductivities, and we have to examine that and do a careful building physics calculation. This is done in passive design in green technologies in our country. We have ECBC code very nicely explained there. And hence thermal comfort is definitely a worry for us. For precast constructions to be qualifying as structural concrete, this is the second point I'm mentioning, where you have thin walls. If you want to say precast constructions to be qualified as structural concrete constructions, the members should have an internal core of concrete and there should be steel on this side and steel on this side. with reinforcement bars on both the sides, excluding the cover. However thick it is. So if you say it is 150, do I have one set of steel on the right side, one set of steel on the left side, and there is a concrete inside? Now, many constructions are only one grill of steel in the center and there is concrete on either side. Now, that is called cover concrete, and this is also called cover concrete. So there is no core concrete in that, right? So cover concrete is not structural concrete, because we can't do calculations with cover concrete for safety. When it comes to safety, you have to demonstrate quantitatively the safety, the load is being carried by this particular core concrete, and that is what is our responsibility. Normally, such structural walls need to be at least about 200 mm thick for you to really make it structurally acceptable. Either you say from fire point of view or load carrying capacity point of view, about 200 mm thick will become very necessary. That is what we're looking at. So thinner walls definitely are our worry. So we have to put through these systems into some test beds and then see whether they are really doing the job that they're supposed to.
Something on water tightness of precast concrete construction?
Yes. In fact, in precast constructions, one of the issues with precast constructions that there are joints, and every time there are joints and there is rain beating on the outside, or there is a wet area inside in the kitchen or in the bathroom area, then this water has a tendency to slide and go through these crevices. And this actually is detrimental to the precast pieces themselves, because they would have some reinforcement in that. And always wet concrete structure is having a greater likelihood of getting into corrosion problems than a completely dry system. So in the modern planning of buildings and houses, they are trying to keep the wet areas distinctly away. And at the earliest opportunity, they want to take the water out of the building. And so the functional planning is so meticulously done these days that the water is your enemy. And you don't want water to be stagnant, neither you want water to be sitting on any concrete member for a long period of time. Ji.
Thank you. Sir, now let's move to another category of cold form and hot rolled steel. And both of us are working on a proposal to enhance use of steel in housing with the Ministry of Steel.
Yeah.
So please tell our technograhis and our audience the benefits of the steel structure system.
Yes, a structural shield should come in to make houses to withstand the extreme conditions, especially from earthquake safety point of view. Because structural steel is a high technology product, higher levels of skills are needed to construct it with, especially when it comes to lifting or when it comes to bolting and welding, right? As you can understand, if two steel members have to be connected, we have to use either bolts or welds, and there are only limited number of them. If you don't do them properly, then obviously you're not getting the advantage of the high strength material that we are using there. In particular, I would say light gauge construction should be successful in housing. There are two reasons why I'm saying this. First is that light gauge sheets can, they can sandwich the insulation material in between them. I can use a 3 mm sheet or 3 mm sheet and then put an insulating material inside and then bring in the thermal comfort that we were just discussing, right? And also it will improve the acoustics performance. You can imagine that when it is raining on a tin roof, obviously it's going to be a headache sitting in that house, right? Now, if you put a sandwich panel, that sound will not pass through this and then will give you much more comfortable living conditions. So that is one issue. When I'm talking about the sandwich panel, this means that the cost will be definitely a little bit higher because it is improving this thermal and acoustic performance. Now, second is when light gauge steel sheets are used with insulation material sandwich in between them, they are connected snugly into a 3D system. They need to be at the wall, whenever the two walls meet, they need to be connected snugly, or when they're meeting a steel member, they need to be connected snugly. And it's possible to connect them with this sandwich panels and light gauge steel. And they make a very stiff and strong structure. And that is what you want for housing. For all the extremes, cyclonic conditions or wind conditions or earthquake conditions, you want a nice and stiff system that is light and is able to withstand that extreme shaking. So especially, I would say in low-rise and small span structures like houses, this system will find success. The cold form system will definitely find success. And for high-rise, large span structures, I would say hot rolled structural steel systems are competitive systems, and they offer speed and performance, both of them. Of course, as you see high rise, then you say higher technology also. In hot rolled steel structures, highly skilled artisans are required for us actually. We just can't expect that you can get an unskilled labor and start mixing sand and steel. If such artisans are made available through proper training and skill development, which is our national flagship program, the product is likely to offer higher performance with hot rolled steel sections. The competition with RC structures will fade away. I'm guaranteeing that, because we have taken RC for granted, and we are not giving due attention to reinforced concrete. In fact, I would not choose between left eye and right eye. If you say steel structures or concrete structures, I'll say they are my left eye and right eye. In certain situations, concrete structures are favorable. In certain situations, steel structures are favorable. But in both situations, we have to give due engineering attention in their design, planning, design, construction, and maintenance. In all of them, we have to give the due respect actually. And if we are not giving that, then the artisans with poor skills will construct them. Then we will lose dignity that we have offered a product, but it was not successful. So many of the time, the entire value chain, everybody has to play their role, not just one person. Steel is very good material, but that stops there. Beyond that, we have to do hard work to make that really become successful. G.
Yes, sir, just a small question came to my mind because you are an eminent earthquake engineer. Please tell our technoguys about the seismic resistance of these hot rolled steel and cold form steel systems with the kind of connections we use, nut bolt or this mechanical connectors.
Hot rolled systems are basically beams and column frame systems, and you will connect beams and columns whether through welding or bolting. The design philosophy is that only beams should get damaged and not the columns, because column is helping the beam and everybody stay in their houses or offices. So we have to have the damage permitted only in the beams. Now you would say, why would you allow damage? Because earthquake loading is actually not force loading, but displaced. Earthquake is a movement under the building, but wind is a force on the building. So this movement, the stiffer you make, the structure will draw more forces. The flexible you make, the structure will swing too much, which will actually be more uncomfortable. So earthquake design is a very sensitive, soft strategy design. And in that, we want that the structure should not swing too much because the physical discomfort that will come. Steel structures, because of the fact that they have large modulus, elastic modulus, they're very stiff material, they will swing lesser if you use the correct structural system. For example, in high earthquake areas, you simply don't use beams and columns. It's not recommended in anywhere in the world. You need to have structural walls in them. Now, these structural walls can be made of steel plates again. They're called steel plate structural walls. So certain bays, you can put steel sheets all the way, and you can also have windows and doors in them, not a problem. So instead of using a masonry wall, you can put a steel plate shear wall there. So these shear walls will actually bring you a lot of stiffness in the two directions, X and Y directions, right? So as far as hot rolled steel is concerned, classically, these have been used in high seismic areas in US, Japan, in New Zealand. So that's not a concern for us. It has been tried and tested for over decades now. Yes, improvements are being made. We are learning more from every earthquake, and so improvements are being made. In India, fortunately, we now have an Indian standard almost complete. It's in the discussion stages. It should be released maybe by this year for seismic design of hot rolled steel structures. Now coming to cold form structures, cold form structures are going by the box concept. So an individual sheet of 3 mm will not save you. But when these individual sheets of 3 mm, two of them are put together, made into a sandwich, and these sandwich panels are then connected to each other. In some cases, you may also use some vertical hot rolled members to get extra support if you want more stiffness. But the key advantage of this cold form steel structures is that they act like a box, and they're nice and snug and stiff. So you really feel you will get a beautiful finish, but also you'll get a very nice stiff box system. And that is what is the intent in seismic design and earthquake resistant design, is that you want to keep all the walls together. You must have heard about masonry structures where we try to put belts. Now in this hot rolled steel structures, you don't need belts, these lintel bands and sill bands and roof bands. We don't need them because steel itself is capable of taking that tension on the outer plane direction. So I would think that The light gauge steel structures, they have been used up to 3-4 stories or even taller in some instances. These will become a competitive product for housing and low-rise constructions, and hot roll will be becoming the kingpin for high seismic areas for taller buildings and larger spans. G.
Next is a simple question about cost. You might have heard that because of during this COVID time, the cost of steel has just ramped up. It was around 45 or something, and now it has all becomes 60. So cost is one of the important parameters, and being asked, by one and all, that the cost of steel in comparison to RCC construction. So any idea that how this cost can be addressed so as to mainstream steel in the housing sector?
Ji, I will backtrack a little bit and say often we are being unfair in cost comparison. What are we comparing? We are comparing a brittle concrete structure or an unreinforced masonry structure cost with a ductile steel structure. Now, this is not proper because a brittle concrete structure or unreinforced masonry structure is unsafe to begin with. You cannot compare oranges and apples. If you want to compare, it is apples and apples, right? You can choose different orchards, but you need apple farms, but you have to compare only similar items. Now, this is where we are actually losing out on every time we compare with a traditional unreinforced masonry house. I would think that if you make the traditional unreinforced masonry house safe, you will be able to see that the cost comparison will come out in 2-3 ways. And first point is that, yes, you might see that the steel structure requires higher level of skills to be used. The material may be slightly marginally higher in cost, unit cost, but what I'm saying is you're using lesser of the material. That is the first item. Where do we use steel? We use steel for main load bearing members. The walling is still going to be the traditional material in India for some more time before more engineered material come. But more is the engineered material, more is the cost. That is also a clear point. So what I'm saying is that the comparison should be of the life cycle of the whole project, not just the initial cost. Many a time initial cost is low, but either your maintenance is high or it is an unsafe structure and later or a damageable structure later you do a lot of money on retrofitting of that, right? So shorter construction time, lower maintenance in certain areas, ease of construction in extreme weather are some of the pointers that will weigh in favor of steel structures actually. So I'm confident that if we make a fair comparison of life cycle costing, definitely steel will give the run for the money to reinforced concrete systems.
So I think wonderfully explained. Nobody ever explained the cost aspect in this thing. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So next is about this, precast sandwich panel systems. These are primarily drywall constructions and can be used for load bearing as well as non-load bearing applications. But there are apprehensions in the construction fraternity about functionality of these panel systems in terms of durability. They make hollow sound, so hollowness, water absorption, and fire. So what are your views on these aspects?
Yeah, actually these concerns are genuine, and I would worry about a housewife or a lady saying that I want to pound some little haldi or something, and I'm fearing that this whole device will go through the floor into the lower story because the thickness of that is only 25 mm of the concrete or whatever is the material that we are using. Vulnerability of hygroscopic materials used as fillers will remain a worry in all rainy areas actually. So hollowness that you talked about, sound issue, and also the issue of hygroscopic materials. There are some materials that are hygroscopic. They draw water and keep the water with themselves, and slowly it will eat away on the neighboring materials that are there. And lack of soundproofing when thin members are used will also be a matter of discomfort. Use of materials that do not offer fire rating will give away the benefit of such systems. And this happens when the product being sold does not go through the due steps in technology development. I mentioned a little bit, I will elaborate again a little later. Just as full-scale testing is an answer to address structural safety, Long duration testing is an answer to functionality issues, all the functionality issues that you mentioned. I think we are in a hurry to send away, like BTech students, we are in a hurry to send them away after 4 years. We used to do 5 years and we used to learn the subject. Now in 4 years, they are not comfortable, we are not comfortable, but they are graduating. So we need to give them some more time. We need to do longer duration testing to address all functionality issues like thermal issues, comfort, sonic sound, acoustic comfort issue, water absorption issues, and all these functional requirements should be met with under all seasons and across years. Only then we will feel comfortable that we approve this as a technology. Otherwise, it will remain a scheme only, a proposal only, right? So I would say we need to follow a parallel track, like full-scale testing for safety, for functionality and durability. We need to get long duration testing. There are some accelerated test methods. So it's not that you will wait for 20 years or something like that. There are some accelerated test methods. We can adopt them. In about a year or two, we can close that whole discussion and come up with a proposal for that. It's possible.
So next is, let's move to next category of formwork systems, which is popularly known as AluForm, aluminum formwork system. And in Rajkot, we are using a tunnel form. So, sir, this is the most widely used technology in India. And I mean, several million houses are being constructed using this technology. But still, engineers and architects are raising questions about the thickness vis-a-vis fire rating. And you might be knowing, in fact, IIT Madras was also involved in one of the projects where fire rating, comparing these prescriptive guidelines given in Indian standard vis-a-vis the thickness of these walls being provided, and about thermal comfort. So, sir, because this is the most widely used technology in India, how these things can be addressed, thermal comfort and fire rating of these thin shear wall system.
Yeah. See, ideally, if you look at the market, they want a building without vertical members, right? They want no material in the vertical members. They want glass walls, thin 3 mm glass walls, so that everything is beautiful all around. Now, what worries me most is in India, we have introduced a number of materials and structural systems without the availability of due standards permitting their use. That is my one of the bigger worries that I have. Sometimes they say, no, we've got it certified by a third party. No, a mere certification, even if it is based on a few calculations, does not render a material safe or suitable. As we said, we need to do testing, and then only it can happen. The concrete structures with thin members are one such unregulated practices. Thin members for horizontal or for vertical, safety, fire rating, thermal comfort, all of these are a worry for thin wall systems. Now, you might say, how do we get around this? Now, we are in the process of revising the Indian Concrete Code IS 456. And in its 5th revision, I'm confident that this matter should be addressed as we see the next version of the document IS 456 come out to the designers. So this is a very serious matter. It is being looked at by the code committee. And so it will be a matter that will get resolved soon. But again, the pain I understand of architects is that untested technologies are causing them discomfort. And this is where confidence building measure is required. We need to have a large set of laboratories in the country that will do these tests and bring out the clear answers, yes or no, and only then we should build a technology out of it. Otherwise, merely these schemes are too many on the market and they need to be addressed very seriously. G.
So the last one is, if you remember, lost formwork system. So we call it a stay in place or SIP formwork system. These are very effective and innovative systems, and can be used beneficially by the construction industry for faster delivery of cost-effective quality structures. Because, sir, this can act as an insulation, or it can act as a part of a structure, adding to the reinforcement. Can you just throw some light at what measures we should take to make this technology as the technology of for the future?
Technology development has 3 phases in it. The first phase is called research phase, where I have an idea and I convert that into a laboratory specimen. The second one is the development phase, where I have the laboratory specimen, but then I will then make it into a prototype model, a full scale as I would build outside in the real world. And the third phase is the technology phase, where this prototype model is processed to make an acceptable technology product. That means you can buy it off the shop, or you can order through a construction agency that I want this technology, and the issues are all understood, verified, and tested. So the stay in place formwork system actually should go through the third phase, which is the technology phase. They've gone through the first two phases, but the third phase is where the issue is getting stuck actually. And that is what I would request those groups which are working on this subject to actually put it through the technology phase, which is converting the prototype model into a technology product. The technology product here is where the society comes in, the acceptability issue, then the financial viability issues come in, the bank, the loan, the interest rates, all those will come in. And also the matter of giving confidence to the buyer that, look, this is safe and you can use it. And how do you do that? You have all the evidences that you've created through all the testing, be it functional testing or be it safety related testing. So this confidence building measure, the last lab, is considered to be the most crucial lab actually, where it gets into the market and becomes acceptable.
I think this was all about such technologies. Let me just ask you a few general questions as you know. So one is, because we are already using these construction systems and we have already shortlisted and have a basket of 54 technologies. CPWD and other public agencies are also promoting and propagating use of these technologies. So tell us tell our techno guys, a lot of them are students who are still pursuing their BTech or post-graduation. Actually, what checks and balances one has to undertake while designing and constructing buildings using these construction systems?
So, there are 5 tenets to be followed in design and construction of buildings. And these are safety, functionality, sustainability, aesthetics, and economy, right? The first 3 are non-negotiable and they have to be in that order. That means safety has to come first in the driving seat. And then comes functionality. It must be useful. That house, you must be able to enter and come out of it happily. All of you, elderly people, young people, everybody, and nobody should topple over the ledge of a balcony or anything like that. So functionality, and then sustainability. I spend my lifetime's earning and I'm retired. Now, before I pass away, the structure is passing away. That is not good for me. So I need to have it sustainable also. So these are the first 3 non-negotiable. The sequence in the last 2 virtues is negotiable, which means aesthetics and economy. Now, if you want more aesthetics, then you will pay more. And if you want more economy, then of course you will pay less and your structure will be more straightforward and simple. An important matter here is that the need for a mandatory third-party peer review in the planning, designing, constructing, and maintenance of the building, maintaining the buildings. In all of these, you need a third-party review. Why is a third party required? See, normally, if I design an aircraft and construct, I want to make an aircraft, 3,000 engineers work on it for 3 years and then do all the tests and bring it out. In case of civil engineering systems, is the unique system. We don't make prototypes, test, do R&D and all. We build at site only one of the kind. We don't have the second piece happening, single piece, right? So, and I'm empowered. As soon as I finish BTech, I'm empowered to sign on any drawing. I may not know anything. I may not have seen the world. I may not understand technology, but still I'm empowered to sign. So to avoid this lacuna, it is said that we need to bring in very experienced, competent engineers in the middle to say what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And acceptable, not acceptable is based on standards. So there are standards laid out. So these third-party peer reviewers who are competent engineers will actually examine all the proposals with respect to the standards that are there and say it is complying with the standard or not complying with the standard. Sometimes compliance with the standard alone is not sufficient. They'll ask for little more because a new situation has arisen which is not reflected in the standard. So what we are looking for is competent professionals for undertaking all these activities on all the 5 levels. Now, so there are 2 mandatory initiatives that are required by urban local bodies and Panchayati Raj institutions in India. And these are licensing of engineers and structural safety audit. And this can happen through a regulatory framework change And before that happens, we need to prepare engineers to become competent, because it can happen anytime. I understand some work is underway in this direction. So if that happens, then we will be found wanting. We will not be ready ourselves. So while that work is going on the other side of bringing regulatory changes, I would think that all the engineering fraternity, starting from academia to the industry, have to work together and make the new set of hands that will build the future of this country, which is the licensed competent engineers, and who will also do the structural safety audit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, next question is about joints and connections. It's just for academic interest, because you have been working, I know, 13920 ductile joints and connections, you have been working. So I thought I will ask you a question on joints and connections, just merely for academic interests. Sir, in any construction, joint and connections are the weakest link. And you taught me also this. So often professionals ask, which is the most efficient jointing system? And when I see literature, they say there are dry jointing system, wet jointing or emulative systems, mechanical fastening systems. Please explain to our audience the prevailing joint and connection systems in a simple language, being used worldwide, and which is to be used in Indian context.
The direct answer to your question is the most efficient jointing system is that which has been tested in full-scale specimens subjected to the likely loads. That is the final answer, right? Having said that,
even for gravity loads,
Param Satya. This is what is called Param Satya.
Okay.
So having said this, I will say it can be any of these. It can be a dry jointing system, wet emulative system, or even the mechanical fastening system. We have no bias. We are not biased towards any one of them. What we are saying is, please test it full scale to the actual realistic loads and show that it is actually standing. That is all I was saying. So now let me elaborate a little bit about joints and connections. There's an important distinction between the two. Now, joint is a geometrical area that is common to two members. Yes. For instance, if I have a column and a beam, the area in between where the column and beam cross, that is the joint area, right?
Yes, sir.
And on the other hand, connection is I have a steel column and I have another steel beam coming in, and I want to put these two together. How do I do that? It is the joinery that I use, like welding, bolting, or even some adhesive material to hold these two members together, right? For instance, you have a precast beam and has to be connected to a column. And if the bolts can be passed through the column, you can sometimes pass through bolts, not just halfway down anchored into the body of the column, but sometimes they pass it through the column. Then there's the bolt that you're using along with the plate, end plate, is called the connection system, right? Now, of the three jointing systems, dry jointing and mechanical fastening systems are called connection systems. They come under connection. They are connecting two members actually, and with explicit items, joinery items like welding, bolting, or adhesion. And the wet or emulative jointing is actually the jointing system because it is playing with the member intersection. And so that is called the jointing system. And the other one is the other two are the connection system. Now, each of them, there is a series of tests that are done traditionally for the expected loads, and you will be able to qualify each of them.
So next is with regard to structural performance. Are these systems superior to classical, traditional cast-in-place frame construction?
See, in general, if you ask, I have a loaf of bread and I chop it. This chopped bread is weaker than the loaf of bread. Always. This is the global truth. I take an apple, and apple by itself is very tight and snug and stiff. But once I make slices out of that, it becomes very soft and flexible. Same in structures also. Any structure that is made of precast members is less efficient than the monolithic counterpart. Always. The question is how much less efficient? Now, why is it less efficient? There is slip between the pieces. And as the column rocks on it, at the toe and the heel, there is crushing going on. So concrete gets crushed there. So crushing and slipping are happening regularly as the structure is breathing during the normal loads that are coming in: temperature, shrinkage, creep, live load, or even the wind forces that are coming. Or of course, in earthquakes, this is a very important part of it. So what we're saying is that both of these, slip and local crushing, are undesirable. The better connection in precast structures, the better is the connection in precast structures, the closer it will go towards the monolithic behavior. What we should achieve is, if monolithic behavior gives me 100, this precast connection should go at least up to 80%. Then we will say we are reasonably good system with us. And how do you compare these two? You make two specimens, one with the original monolithic, one with the precast system, and compare 1-to-1 exactly under the same load conditions, what will be the difference. And this is traditionally done internationally, worldwide, in R&D laboratories, and demonstrated that these are reasonably acceptable systems. So we are not discouraging anybody. All we are saying is there's a route that you have to follow to be able to qualify any of these for implementation.
Thank you, sir.
Ji.
So next is, there is a constant debate about, Indian, or I'd say codes, standards, design aids, softwares to be used for design of these buildings using these emerging construction systems.
Ji.
Please elaborate it. Also tell us, do we have requisite Indian standards? Also guide our techno-guys about the softwares to be used for analysis and design.
Ji. So the Indian standards required to design buildings are of two types. Namely those that help estimate the demand on the building and those that help estimate the capacity of the building. Demand is called the load, and the capacity is called the resistance, let us say, right? So the standards that help you get the demand or loads are IS 875. It comes in 5 parts: dead load, live load, snow load, and so on, wind load, and so on. For estimating all loads other than earthquakes, IS 875. And for earthquake effects, you'll get IS 1893. There are 2 parts. One is related to normal buildings, other related to industrial buildings also. So you can use these for estimating earthquake loads on that. Then you come and use IS 456 if you're using concrete structures, and IS 800 if you're using steel structures. And as the guidance comes from the IS 456 or 800, you will combine the loads, estimate the demand on the various members, and then design as per the clauses given therein for steel or concrete structures. Now, this is the traditional system that is running in the professional practice also. No surprise, nothing new happening. But what is changed in the market right now is the use of commercial software for both analysis and design, right? Each software has its own strengths and limitations. Now, currently, there is a trend for providing customized software for buildings only, bridges only, water tanks only, and like that they're doing customization because everybody cannot get all the markets. So they're trying to go towards specialized markets and make themselves viable. One needs to examine carefully before purchasing the most suitable one for the task that we are having at our hand, right? It is possible that in some software, one module is not working properly. In most cases, most of the users are looking at graphic user interfaces as the basis for evaluating software. I will not do that. I will go to the back end and look at accuracy of numbers as a basis for evaluating the software. It will be nice if an organization in the country can fund a competition of comparing all the standards, and it should be done neutrally without any bias. For the same structure, if we analyze and design by 3 or 4 popular commercial software in the market, what are the results? We haven't done this actually interesting exercise, and maybe it is time for us to do it because the questions are one too many and the matter is quite serious also, right? Ji.
Sir, the next is, I think I've discussed this question to you many times. When we do a monolithic concrete construction, people ask, how do I put my cooler there? How can I insert a nail? I have to put a picture of God. So how do I put that? So the question is about how do we carry out maintenance of services in these emerging systems, whether it is water lines, whether it is sanitary installations or electrical cables or sewerage.
Ji. See, maintenance has been a weak spot in the Indian professional practice. We haven't been maintenance sensitive per se. If you look at the traditional constructions that we have been doing, wherever we want, we will put anything we want, right? Now, it is tedious to maintain an existing building built without maintenance planning embedded in it, right? And both in the planning stage as well as in the design stage. You just said, I want to put a God's picture, I want to drive a nail. But if my wall itself is so thin, and when I'm driving a nail, am I really, disturbing the structural safety part of it? That is the question. But fortunately, consciousness is growing and more attention is now being given to the maintenance aspect. And maintenance sensitive designs tend to adopt passive design technologies or strategies like in ECBC, I'm saying, and use limited number of items that need maintenance. So one of the things that is very clear is the fewer is the mouths to feed, the better is the situation, right? If you have 10 items in a building and 7 of them require maintenance, versus another building in which only 2 of them require maintenance, I think the second building is a better option, right? This consciousness is growing now, both in architects as well as in designers. Now, it is possible to significantly reduce the maintenance effort and cost by careful planning. And in the newer systems, particularly the new technology systems, as I said, we are now consciously keeping away all the services items to one side, so that we don't have them coming crisscrossing either during construction or later for maintenance. It is easier if all the service items are on outside and handled externally. Nobody need to come inside the building except for small items like faucet is to be replaced and so on. G.
So would you like to comment on service life and durability of buildings being constructed with emerging construction?
Yes. Any structure with joints or pieces sliding on each other will cause worry for us. And leaking joints is not solvable permanently. You can say, I will put some a compound, a chemical compound that will seal that. Perfect. But 2 seasons of high temperature, 2 seasons of low temperature and rainy weather, the compound gets separated from the adjoining material. Like concrete versus any silicone material, or steel and silicone material. They're not friends. They have different thermal expansion, coefficients of thermal expansion. So they will do happily whatever they want in their normal life. So after 2-3 seasons, you see they get separated. Be it on the rooftop, we do waterproofing, or the jointing systems that we have tried. But this worry can be minimized by reducing the number of pieces and employing snug connections, actually, instead of trying to. So many a time, very sensitive architects, what they do is that there are 2 pieces, one coming and sitting on top of each other. On the top piece, they will keep a lip so that the water drips out and goes away and doesn't go into the. So this kind of simple strategies are being adopted by architects, and they come up with very nice and innovative strategies. So we must work closely with architects to reduce this menace of leaking joints and thereby improve the durability and service life of these structures, right? In service life, let me also add here that at the design stage itself, you will be able to decide the service life by choosing the correct materials and correct structural systems and correct construction procedures. So I would think that the whole thought of defining a service life and walking towards that through appropriate processes is the procedure. And IS 456, the new revision, will help us in trying to get this clarified, actually, because that is how it is being written in the new version. G.
Sir, next question you have already answered, but let me just ask you again for the sake of completeness. And if you want to add something to that, you can just add. This is the most perennial question, so I'm saying it perennial question. While dealing with emerging construction system, is their cost comparable to conventional construction, and how it should be addressed? Although you answered, but if you want
I will give a try and different take on this now.
Okay,
this is a decade of intellectual property, right?
Yes.
And so if any agency spends thought, effort, time, and money to perfect a construction technology, it will expect profits, right? It's not going to be coming free. If you are looking for convenience, they are looking for profits. So you have to spare a part of your pocket to fill their pockets now. So we have to pay more for new technologies than we would have done for conventional technologies. I will give you a quick comparison. In 1970s, in a house, the non-structural elements costed 5% only. Non-structural elements included maybe a fan in the middle of the room, and for the whole house, only 2 fans or even 1 fan. and then one switch for one lamp in one room.
Yes, sir.
Right? Nothing else. Sometimes even plastering is not there. And sometimes painting is not there. If plastering is there, painting is not there. Today, in a building, the finishes are 90% in the case of hospitals, 80% in the case of commercial structures, and 70% in the case of residential structures. You can imagine that in 100 rupees, 30 rupees only is construction, and 70 is for the rest of the finishes that we are applying on that structure, be it marble flooring or faucets or tiling or plastic emulsions or different lighting systems, Wi-Fi systems, air conditioning systems, you name it, and we have a list of these happening now. So we will have to pay more, no doubt about it. But as of now, I must say that there is no clear evidence as to whether new technologies are indeed cost effective from the point of view of life cycle building. It's not clear yet, because these are just coming in, and so we have to really see how much is their entire life cycle, because we haven't done those accelerated tests. We don't know how many years each of those components used in these new technologies will survive. And if we do that accelerated test, we can confidently say the number today. But because we haven't done that, we have to really, be a bit on the back foot on this subject. But definitely believe that the comparison with conventional systems is a little unfair, because conventional systems don't have all the conveniences that you are having now. And so again, we are making an unfair comparison. So be ready that you will pay a little more than what is conventionally available, but you will also get better convenience. And for me, more than convenience, on the top of the line driving seat is safety. Always ask for safety, and then rest of it will follow. Functionality, sustainability, aesthetics, and economy will follow.
So what special construction skills and trades one has to learn to implement these technologies in the field?
See, these technologies are very exciting for me. There's no doubt about it. What I'm seeing is that today, a whole subject has grown, and it's called construction management. It's a mature subject now, and there is a vast body of knowledge. The skills required are many, and they are formally now written down. Now, what are these skills in which direction? In three directions: planning, designing, constructing. Now, in planning, functional planning, manpower planning, financial planning, material planning, equipment planning, legal planning, and including full-scale testing, I would say there, both for functionality as well as for safety. The second one is in designing. One nice thing that has happened with the availability of computers is that you can do construction stage analysis rather quickly, right? So during construction, we put in a different set of loads, and after completion, the loads are different, because the structure is also being formed, so the connections are not complete yet, and so on. So that is why the construction stage analysis is a major, sort of step forward in structural analysis that we need. Also, design strategies and detailing, fine points are also coming in very nicely in this whole modern technologies that are coming. And in construction side, methods, logistics, scheduling, because you want it on time, you want it on the promised time, you want to deliver these structures. So obviously, they have to keep to a schedule. So there are a number of skills that the young engineers and young architects who are coming out can learn. No one person has knowledge of everything. But if you're a bunch of 20 friends and you pick one subject each, who knows? You might even make a company eventually in 10, 15 years after you've picked up enough experience in each of these domains. And that is what should be the roadmap. And when I look at the country with so many young people, I think there is enough place for each one of us to grow and successfully do a career in each of these skills and trades that we are talking about.
Okay, sir. So next is, at present, there are very few agencies in India who work on these new technologies. How it can be scaled up to bring more and more players in the arena to meet the growing urban needs of housing and infrastructure?
The ongoing urban to rural migration is actually gazing at us and asking this very question, like, how would you make it happen for us, right? The bottleneck as I understand, is in the decision making on which technology to use. That is where the bottleneck is. If you're saying that we are having a little bit of sluggishness on moving forward with these new technologies, the hesitation is I don't have complete confidence on any one of them or a set of 4 or 5 of them. And I say, go ahead and build these. Don't worry about it. It'll happen. It'll be safe, right? This is so because there's no experimental evidence on the behavior of various building systems under the expected loads that the buildings are expected to withstand. Now, if all systems are subjected to full-scale testing and appropriate technologies are identified, then the decision making will be just like that. Because you have 100 technologies on the table, the decision makers knows that these 36 technologies are, proven, tested. So decision making will be fine like that, because then the person says, okay, cold climate, this technology, warm weather, this, arid weather, this technology, rainy condition, that technology. He can pick, or she can pick any technology that is appropriate for that different environment, right? Fortunately, today, we have 2 such experimental test facilities in India for testing prototype buildings up to 3 stories in height, right? And 2 more are getting constructed. So we need to work hard to make available by 2025, which is another 2, 3, 4 years from today, at least 2 such full-scale test facilities in each zone of India: North Zone, South Zone, Central, West, East, and Northeast. In each of these zones, we need to have at least 2 such test facilities, because there should not be a shortage of doing this verification, because it is people's lives which is at stake. So we want to build these facilities, and we'll encourage any organization, third party neutral organization, to really build these facilities and give confidence to the government and all the decision makers that this is a technology that is tested. The full scale test facilities, uh, along with some policy changes and development of suitable safety standards and some pilot projects. These are the 4 things that we need to do: full scale test facilities, policy changes, development of standards, and pilot projects. If you do all of these, it will showcase a very positive story for the potential construction players to feel confident, and they will enter this area of housing development in the country, right? I'm confident that they will be excited to come in once they are given these 4 support points.
So my last question is, in the wake of clarion call given by our Honorable Prime Minister of Atmanirbhar Bharat and building a new young India, how do you see the future of these technologies in the Indian construction sector? And do you think we can become the global leaders in the future as far as construction technologies are concerned?
Thank you, Shailesh. This is a very pointed and very powerful question. Civil engineering and architecture will continue to be the 2 professional domains that will have to work on the field with hard hats on. These are the 2 subjects which will remain as hard hat subjects, right? They have to go sweat it out in the hot sun, in the rainy weather, in the cold climate, whatever it is. Now, these professionals and these professions have to be celebrated for the impact that they have made so far on the development of India, right? This is something that we need to celebrate their contributions. Now, younger citizens of India must be enthused to be a part of this second rebuilding of India. The first one was at independence, and now is the second rebuilding of India that is underway. And the younger people must be enthused because they are hearing so positive, vibes from these stories of the architecture and civil engineering professions. Now, if this happens, India can stand as a humble example to the rest of the world on how to be self-reliant. Right?
Wonderful. I think that was my last question. So, sir, with this, we come to the end of this valuable discussion. But before, I just say goodbye, sir, because these techno guys, we have a wide spectrum of people, a lot of students and other people who are looking forward to work in the area of emerging construction system. That is one thing.
Right.
Secondly, about my effort. We, along with Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, have been working very hard, really, to create an enabling ecosystem so as to mainstream these technologies. Just after this, I'm going to run a course on, called Navriti, where we are actually teaching through experts like you who are taking 3-hour session on these, technologies. We are also working with CPWD BIS to get these technologies included in emerging construction system. So I want you to give a passing remark to my young students and planners that if they want to make, how do they repose confidence in these emerging construction system? And please tell that in Hindi.
जी जी.
Yes, sir.
आज एक ऐसा मौका है भारत में जहां पे हम इस देश के पुनः निर्माण के लिए आगे कदम बढ़ाएंगे, और इस श्रम में मैं मानता हूं कि जो हमारी नई पीढ़ी है उसके सामने सिर्फ एक ही लक्ष्य होना चाहिए, और वो लक्ष्य है इस देश को बनाने का. जायज है कि हमारे जो शिक्षा है अलग अलग दिशा में, और हम मानते हैं कि ये हमारी जो तालीम हुई है आज तक ये किसी एक सीमित स्तर तक हुई है. लेकिन मैं मानता हूं कि अगर आप किसी भी विषय पे 10 साल डटे रहें, कहा जाता है कि 10,000 घंटे आपने श्रम किया किसी भी विषय में, तो ये देश के लिए आप एक बहुत खास शख्सियत बनोगे, और आपकी जरूरत इस देश के लिए है. और मैं अभी इस मौके पे ये कहना चाहता हूं कि अगर आप इत्मीनान रखें, अगर आप अपने आप को 10 साल के लिए श्रम करने के लिए तैयार रखें, तो आपका श्रम का जो फल है उसके बाद दिखने लगेगा आपको. क्योंकि वजह यह है कि शुरुआत के दिनों में 3 विषय आपको जानने होंगे: पैसा क्या है, लोग क्या हैं, और टेक्नोलॉजी क्या है. आपकी शिक्षा जो आज तक दी गई है बैचलर्स प्रोग्राम तक, इसमें पैसा आपने पिताजी का खर्च किया, राइट. लोगों 4 आदमी से आपसे मिले और 2 से लड़ाई कर लिए, और बची टेक्नोलॉजी जो 4 शब्द आप सीखे हैं. आपको और सीखना है इन तीनों दिशा में: पैसा क्या है, लोग क्या हैं, और टेक्नोलॉजी क्या है. इसके लिए आपको समय लगता है, इस देश को समझने के लिए समय लगता है. देश को समझिएगा, देश की जरूरतों को समझिएगा, पहचानिएगा, और उसी दिशा में आपका श्रम डालते जाइएगा. और मैं दावे से कहता हूं कि 10 साल में रातों रात माजरा जैसा लगेगा. अगर पलट के आप देखोगे, आपका श्रम रंग लाएगा. इसी उम्मीद से मैं मानता हूं कि आप लगे रहें और देश के लिए सोचते रहें. आपकी बढ़ोतरी हो जाएगी, देश आगे बढ़ेगी तो आप जरूर बढ़ेंगे. लेकिन आप अगर आगे बढ़ेंगे अकेले, देश के बारे में मैं कुछ नहीं कह सकता. देश को बढ़ाते जाइए, आप बढ़ते जाएंगे. बस यही 2 बातें हमारी तरफ से.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. With this, we come to end of this valuable discussion. I have no words to express my gratitude towards you, Professor Murthy, for acceding to my request at the 11th hour. I know you are very busy for last few days, and responding to each questions as always elaborately, passionately, and in your evergreen professor mode. Thank you very much, Professor Murthy. With persons like you around, I am I am really confident that mission of Government of India to bring a paradigm shift in the way we build by introducing these cutting edge technologies will be successful, and these emerging systems will be the technologies of the future in India. Also, the day will not be far when India will become one of the global leaders in the area of innovative construction technologies. It's time for me to sign off. I will come back with fresh discussion on another new technologies with another subject specialist. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar.